We make way for Chris Mannix. Mannix has been all over this possibility of a trade between the Brooklyn Nets and the Boston Celtics. How real is this, Chris, the possibility that Kevin Durant and the Celtics could maybe pull off a deal?
The Nets are in a way, running out of options with Kevin Durant. They couldn't put a deal together involving Phoenix. And that's when Phoenix had DeAndre Ayton as a potential trade chip. That's off the board now because Ayton's new contract prevents him from being traded, at least in that first year. Miami, you can't trade Bam Adebayo to Brooklyn with Ben Simmons on the roster because of league rules. And I don't get the sense Miami has an appetite to deal Bam Adebayo as it is. Toronto is not giving up Scotty Barnes in a deal for Kevin Durant. So the number of potential suitors is pretty limited out there. And Boston's out there with a bona fide all-star in Jaylen Brown, draft picks, which, as I said, they're unafraid to deal, and swap rights, whatever you want to do, and ancillary pieces that they could throw into the pot that might satisfy Brooklyn. So it's a long way of saying I believe there's real teeth to the possibility of Kevin Durant winding up in Boston.
Let's look at Jaylen Brown's situation. He was the Celtics' best player in the finals, probably looks around and goes, wait a minute, you've tried to trade me a couple of times now. Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, it felt like he was going to be involved in those trades. He's 25, 2 years left on this deal. Is he or was he in the long-term plans for the Celtics?
Look, I think Jaylen's always been part of the long-term plans for the Celtics, except if you can get a transcendent player. I mean, Jaylen Brown has not been talked about in deals that would net a player the equivalent of Jaylen Brown. The names you mentioned, Kawhi Leonard, which was a topic when Leonard was being dealt from San Antonio. Anthony Davis, when Davis was at the peak of his powers playing in New Orleans. And now Kevin Durant, an all-NBA guy who has 4 years remaining on his contract. It's just Jaylen Brown is the most movable piece on this roster. Now, the Celtics might be getting themselves into a bit of a pickle with Brown for some of the reasons that you talked about. I mean, Brown, even though it has been for players who are elite, has been talked about in trades every single year. I mean, you go back to Jaylen Brown's draft night, Dan. He was booed. His selection was booed on draft night in Boston for some fans that wanted them to take Chris Dunn in that draft. So he's had kind of a roller coaster ride in the city. So the Celtics have to wonder if all these trade talks have poisoned the well in a way with Jaylen Brown. You saw him tweet something on Monday that seemed to suggest he was a little bit frustrated. The other part of this is that Jaylen Brown does have 2 years remaining on his contract, but it's not a contract that's likely to be extended for financial reasons. Jaylen Brown took what turned out to be a below market value contract when he signed one a few years ago. And because of that, he can't turn around and sign a max level extension next summer with this team. There are limits to how much Boston can offer him in an extension. They can go all out and offer him a 5-year max when he hits free agency in 2024, but that's a risk. Like Jaylen Brown will be an unrestricted free agent in 2024. And he could look around and say, you know what? I'm tired of all this trade talk. I want to go to a place where I can be either A, more appreciated, or B, be in a position to be the lead man on that team. I believe I have the talent to ultimately do that. And the Celtics could wind up losing him for nothing. So there are a couple of reasons why Boston might be motivated to get deeper into this mix.
Okay, what happens next? Does it come from the Nets in what they want, or does it come from the Celtics since this is where it originated?
Whether it's the Celtics or any other team interested in Kevin Durant, it now becomes kind of a game of chicken where everybody kind of retires to their corner for a few weeks and waits to see what kind of plays out. For teams that are interested in Durant, including Boston, they want to see what Brooklyn's appetite really is for bringing the band back together. I mean, the Nets want the league to believe that they are willing to bring back Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. And because of that, there's no sense of urgency to do that. There's skepticism among some of the league officials that I've talked to that Brooklyn really is willing to do that. So the way I'm kind of reading the room here, Dan, is that everyone is off for a few weeks. Maybe they're already off right now, go on vacation, all that. And then mid to late August, maybe even early September, you kind of reconvene, take the temperature of their respective teams. Now, Brooklyn may decide, you know what, we can't do this. Kevin Durant doesn't want to be here. We're not going to bring him back. We're not going to have a circus on our hand with Durant back in town. They'll say, you know what, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, throw in Grant Williams, and maybe we can make a deal. Or the alternative is the Nets could say, you know what, no deal unless we get what we want. And the Celtics may be faced with having to decide whether or not to include Marcus Smart in a deal. I personally think that you could probably get it done with Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and a whole bunch of draft picks and swaps. But the Celtics, understandably, don't want to do that. Marcus Smart took a lot of criticism after the finals, but this is a reigning defensive player of the year, still in his 20s, still at or near the top of his game. They don't want to move Marcus Smart, but it may come down to that decision when we get into late August.
Yeah, but if you're the Celtics, we're going to pass on Kevin Durant because we don't want to give up Marcus Smart.
It's 2 starters, Dan. Real assets, real value that they'd be giving up.
It's Kevin Durant.
It is Kevin Durant, which is why I wouldn't hesitate to trade Jaylen Brown, who is 25 and has the potential to be an all-star, all-NBA player for the next 10 years. It's a risk there because Durant's injury history has to leave you a little bit leery. He's going to be 34 years old in September, but I'd still do it. Adding Marcus Smart into that mix, a player that has been integral to what they do defensively, that might be a little bit too much for the Celtics to swallow, especially when you consider that, if you believe Vegas, I mean, they're going into next season as like the co-favorite.
That's why I wouldn't do anything, Chris.
Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't do, again, just me speaking, I probably wouldn't do both. I wouldn't throw Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown into that mix. But if you're just effectively flipping Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant plus a Derek White plus draft picks.
I'd do that.
Of course, yes. Yeah. That opens a 4-year window right there for you to win multiple championships. People out there have taken the opinion of the Celtics should do nothing. They should stand pat. I've read that a lot because the Celtics are considered a favorite. I can tell you, even if they are listed as a favorite and by odds makers in Vegas and whoever, there's not a comfort in Boston that they are the favorite. They know they were probably a Chris Middleton injury away from losing in the second round. They were a Jimmy Butler jump shot away from losing in the conference finals. They're looking around and going, Philadelphia just reloaded. Atlanta's going to be better. Cleveland's going to be better. Hell, they could be one, not even major injury away from losing in the first round in next year's playoffs. That's how little the margin for error is. You add Kevin Durant, that margin increases significantly for next season.
He's Chris Mannix. He covers the NBA senior writer for Sports Illustrated. The Donovan Mitchell situation, it certainly was front burner, and then it cooled off. Are we looking at the same time frame if something happens in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think it could be that, but it's almost more likely to be even longer. I feel like some of these reports that are coming out there about Mitchell to the Knicks is almost wishful thinking on behalf of some. Look, I wrote this today on SI.com. Like, this is exactly the kind of situation Danny Ainge wants to be in. If he's not competing for a championship, this is the situation he wants to be in. To have a young, highly talented player that he doesn't really want to have on the roster anymore because he wants to go into a rebuild, with 3 years left in his contract and multiple suitors out there. Like with Rudy Gobert, Danny found someone that was just desperate. He just smells desperation on teams really well. And Minnesota came in and offered those 4 draft picks and young players and got a deal done. Someone, whether it's a few weeks from now, a few months from now, the trade deadline, someone's going to get desperate. There are some obvious choices or candidates out there right now. The Knicks, they could get desperate. They've wanted Donovan Mitchell for years now. Leon Rose used to represent him, CAA in New York. Miami, if Boston gets Durant and other teams move around, the Sixers picked up pieces. Miami could say, look, Donovan Mitchell's better than Tyler Hero. We'll throw Tyler Hero, 3 first-round draft picks, whatever else on the side that you want. Phoenix, look, that was a tough exit for Phoenix in the playoffs. They could say, look, Mikal Bridges plus every draft pick we've got to go get you Donovan Mitchell. All I can tell you is this, Dan. Danny Ainge is going to win this trade. He is. He's just going to win this trade. He's going to find somebody out there that is just crazy and wants to get Donovan Mitchell so bad, they're willing to give the kind of package that would almost make a Durant deal look tame by comparison. Somebody out there is going to do it.
Thank you, Chris.
You got it, Dan.
That's Chris Mannix, covers the NBA for Sports Illustrated, bringing up some interesting thoughts about this. And if you're Jaylen Brown and they know he's not going to be there long term, then maybe you start to sweeten the deal